Hi, I'm Larry Dignan. I'm editor-in-chief with Constellation Insights, and we're here with Mary Kent. She is head of digital transformation and change at Magnox, which is a utility. Hi, Mary. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Larry. How are you? Good
So
to be
I guess
here.
let's just start out from the top in terms of what your role is and, what your, I guess it's an agency of the UK government, what it does.
Yes, yeah. So Magnox is a subsidiary of the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. That basically means we are decommissioning 12 of our previous sites. 10 were our first generation nuclear power plants in the UK, and 2 are research sites. So we report into the NDA, which ultimately it goes into the Cabinet Office. So you can see where some of our controls are. In terms of our challenges, so because we're technically still in the nuclear sector, obviously we've got a lot of regulation that we need to comply with. Some may be more onerous than other organisations in terms of some of the waste that we treat, although all of our nuclear materials is off-site now, so it's mainly some of our legacy waste that we still are treating on sites.
So you have plants that are running and then plants you're decommissioning?
Oh, they're all decommissioning. So we've got one site that's running, which is actually a hydro plant up in North Wales. That's the only site we currently have running.
So what are some of the HR challenges in terms of, like, I know you have retirements coming up. I guess what are some of the digital employee experience issues when your group is basically decommissioning things?
So there's lots of challenges, really. I suppose one of the first challenges we have is that up until 2019, we were actually going to be decommissioning ourselves into a state of care and maintenance by about approximately 2029. Once we became under the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority as a subsidiary, we changed direction. Basically, it was a 180 where we were looking to reduce operations significantly. We are now expanding operations, so we're also taking on the AGR, EDF nuclear stations that are either defueling at the moment or are still generating, will come to us between 2026 and about 2033. So we're also growing. So in terms of our summer HR challenges that you can imagine, because our company has been around for 50 plus years, we've got a lot of legacy ways of working. Each of our site operated in a different way, which means we've got different ways of working at each site, not just within HR, but probably wider than that. We have, over the last number of years, we have implemented some digital solutions, which definitely are helping with recruitment activities and performance activities. But again, within the sector, because nuclear new build is fairly high in profile within the UK at the moment, we are competing with other industries in order to attract and retain our employees or future skill sets.
So your firm basically went from, we're not going to need to hire a bunch of people, to we got to get recruiting.
Yeah, absolutely.
It totally flipped.
Yeah, it really did. In fact, generally speaking, we hadn't hired anybody probably for permanently, apart from a backfill, for about 5-10 years. Then we went from a state of not recruiting permanent employees to recruiting quite a considerable amount of permanent employees, as part of the change in strategy. So obviously during that period, we hadn't really made any significant improvements in recruitment procedures or applications, or indeed development, because another challenge we have is actually the age of our workforce. So we've got a workforce that is, within the next 5 to 10 years are likely to retire. So that gives us a challenge in terms of knowledge management, and how do we retain that knowledge? How do we develop our current employees, and how do we have visibility of what their skill sets are, and what their ambition is in terms of what direction they want to go to as well.
So, well, I guess you earned your title in terms of transformation and change, given that 180.
Yeah.
So if I'm following this correctly, you had a bunch of older legacy systems in place.
Yeah.
What was sort of the process and plan to, update in terms of just making, things more cohesive?
So there were probably some basic infrastructure changes we needed to make in terms of connecting, physical connection. COVID probably brought a lot of transformation to many industries. But so the basic things were paper, mainly for HR's paper-based processes, and then digitally enabling them or transforming them. But before we even got to that stage, we had to increase our capability from a network perspective, which ultimately gives us the opportunity to then expand in our digital transformation journey.
So is that almost like an advantage where, you have systems that are so old, it's almost greenfield?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Many of our systems are old. Not so much with our Unifor ERP system, because we've had that on cloud since 2017, but other applications and system we use were considered technical debt, and they're the priority in terms of transforming how we work as a business and how we compete for the top talent in the country. I mean, if I was a younger person, I would rather go to somewhere where it was easier for me to do my job and to connect with people than to go to somewhere where we don't actually have to pick up the phone, but figuratively speaking, pick up the phone to find something out rather than being able to find it with a touch of a few clicks.
So how did you go about selecting vendors, and what did you ultimately decide to go with?
So for particularly in the HR sector, we had a look. The business had a look at some alternatives and other solutions for performance management and talent management, because we were already a partner with Unit 4 for our ERP and our HCM modules. They basically came up as a preferred provider for many reasons. One, that we had an existing relationship. Obviously, we've got public sector procurement rules that we need to comply with as well. So just to kind of put that out there. But also the connectivity, it was easy to connect our ERP to our talent management system.
So it's a case of, I guess, the integration won out over best of breed?
Yes, yeah. The integration and also the product itself, the ability to be able to have almost online real-time chats or feedback with your employees. And actually, if you're working in a hybrid team, for example, someone from your project team could give some positive feedback, or maybe not positive feedback, to the line manager. So you can track you can track all of that in one place.
So what has moving to the cloud and a more unified system given the company?
Of many things. One, within my IT head on me, is certainly security. In terms of our data is safe. The other items is also we don't have to support the infrastructure ourselves, because we're putting that into the hands of Unit 4, and as that's their bread and butter at this stage. But also it allows us to be able to connect up to other systems that we have, get data sets together, and ultimately have one single source of the truth and trust our data.
So as far as recruitment and talent management goes, what do you see as the, I guess, connective tissue between employee engagement and bringing in new workers?
Good question. So in terms of recruitment, so what we previously, again, we had very manual processes, very paper-based emails being sent out with offers. So we now have an integrated solution which connects with the Unit 4 products, where we can obviously identify where a resource demands are, whether that's through succession management or through backfilling where we have knowledge gaps or people retiring, and we can see where those gaps are in our ERP, and then go out to market by using our application tracking system and using the talent management to identify any potential internal candidates.
What were some of the hard ROI metrics that the project yielded?
So for the talent management, the ROI was more to do with the time spent actually doing performance interviews or performance meetings from whether it's a team leader meeting with a team member. We were previously using Word documents, and as well as that, basically Word documents were saved in people's or say file shares or local C drives in some cases. There was no visibility from a company perspective, firstly, as to whether anybody had actually carried out the performance management or meeting. But so nowadays we have HR can see who has had a one-to-one with their team. It's visible. But if you take we've about 2,500 employees. And the idea is that they have 2 to 3 of these meetings on an annual basis, which seems quite restrictive, really, if you think about it. But that's about, previously we would have spent maybe 30 minutes at least, maybe to an hour, filling in all of these forms. Just in some cases, people didn't really see the value of it because they knew their line manager was going to send it in there, save it into their C drive, and it wasn't going to go any further. But now, because we're using the talent management system, we've got the company has visibility. We can also bring down objectives from the company objectives onto individuals' objectives for the year, which shows, I think, from me personally, it shows where what I'm delivering meets and feeds into the overall delivery strategy for Magnox.
So in terms of, I know on the SuperNova application, it was mentioned that the Magnox was working really hard not to customize. How hard is that, especially in your industry? Because everything from the operating systems behind the reactors, it's all it's all proprietary. It's hard to get off shelf stuff. So I guess culturally, how was that?
Well, it's a really good question, Larry, because it's probably one of the biggest challenges that we have is about nowadays with SaaS. Using SaaS as products or applications that are on SaaS, it's easier to sell that challenge to the business. But in going to the point about it being different reactors and operation systems at each site, that would those processes and ways of working, and which ultimately lead to customizations, would have been mimicked in terms of the functional requirements for like HR, finance, and other areas of the business. But from business functions, we're not really that special in my opinion, which means we shouldn't need to deviate from off-the-shelf products, and that's something that we're trying to achieve as part of some of the transformation that we're doing. With an example, slightly off topic, but an example is our waste management systems. We've actually managed to start to change the culture across our business, and to say that we actually manage waste. We have waste, it happens, we process it, and then it goes to wherever, whether it's for recycling to be stored in situ or so on. So it's an end-to-end process. So in terms of weeding out the customizations, we are getting there, and there's still a little bit of work to do. But I think there's certainly recognition within our company that we don't have to be special. I mean, not to try and detract from safety being our ultimate priority, is keeping our people and our environment safe, but that shouldn't have an impact on the need for having to put built-in customizations into the products that we're developing.
So something like waste management, is it a case of start that one over. So for something like waste management, is that a case of just looking at it like a supply chain and sort of adopting that module?
Yes, it is. So if we were to apply and again, it probably depends on which area of Magnox you work in, but if we were to apply a value chain to what Magnox does, we're either an asset management company or a waste management company. But equally, you have an input, you have a process, you have an output. And that's pretty much what we do. It's just obviously in a highly regulated industry, but we still produce something, whether it's a service or you say decommissioning a building, or taking the waste from that building and treating it, whichever the most suitable route is.
Okay, so there's a lot of logistics and things like that. So I guess in a lot of ways you would look like a manufacturer who needs to move material.
In a way, yeah. I mean, some of the material will stay on site, depending on what it is, or it might be asbestos, which would be treated by obviously an asbestos-approved supplier and go to the appropriate place for it.
Okay. So I guess what's next in terms of, scaling hiring? I guess what's next on your list and agenda? Now it sounds like you have, you have the base in terms of, the SaaS and the cloud and things like that. What's next moving forward?
Well, next is a number of things really, but we still have some work to do on improving our processes. So with one of the projects we have live at the moment is working with our HR colleagues to help improve and simplify their currently manual processes. So we're looking at expanding what we're doing with payroll within our current application, obviously, and moving away from, because we still use quite a lot of spreadsheets instead of actually using the data that's held in the systems, but that's for various reasons. So it's really about kind of continuing to exploit the products that we already have with Unifor and other suppliers, to really leverage the data to be able to bring real analytics and together in order to make decisions. So whether that's the unique challenge to us is around about the age of our workforce. So to be able to plan ahead for for recruitment, for backfilling, for knowledge management, for attraction and retention of people, that they're sort of our next steps. So it's just to continue on our journey, but and certainly exploit what we already have rather than building upon additional applications.
How critical is knowledge management at this point? I mean, I've kind of followed that space for, it feels like, almost forever. And the idea was, you'd capture this information, and companies have been, the success has been kind of mixed. I guess what's your insights on, knowledge management and just kind of capturing that knowledge from retiring workers?
It's a massive challenge we have, Larry. It's particularly for when you're talking about individual operating sites where there's knowledge literally in people's heads and it's not written down anywhere. We have a separate project that's looking at that, particularly from an engineering and decommissioning perspective. But if we can get that in, that knowledge written down somewhere, well, not written down, I should say, in a data set somewhere, it just makes it much easier to be able to plan and enable ourselves to continue on our mission.
Yeah, because I imagine most of that data is unstructured, right? I mean, it would be best case is on paper somewhere, worst case it's in somebody's head.
Oh, absolutely, yes. It's a separate project we're working on at the moment is actually migrating all of our documents and files and drawings and so on away from our peer drives, which is our sort of local old style file shares, into the cloud, whereby at that point we should be able to then at least assess the information that we have, the knowledge that we have. But I don't know if any company ever manages to really get to grips with knowledge management. It's certainly a big challenge for us, especially because our sites were built in the 1950s, 1960s. There's not many people that are still working here now, but there are a few.